सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। जन्माद्यस्य यतोऽन्वयादितरतः चार्थेष्वभिज्ञस्वराट् तेने ब्रह्महृदाय आदिकवये मुह्यन्ति यत्सूरयः तेजो वारिमृदां यथा विनिमयः यत्र त्रिसर्गो मृषा धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि सच्चिदानन्दरूपाय विश्वोत्पत्त्यादिहेतवे तापत्रयविनाशाय श्रीकृष्णाय वयं नुमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तमनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुः तं सर्वभूतहृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये ततो जयमुदीरये। In the story of Dhruva, there is one situation which Dhruva faces, where he is totally helpless from the worldly standpoint. His mother could not help him because she was helpless. His stepmother could not help him because she was heartless. Isn't it? His father also could not help him because he was powerless. So what I am trying to say is, in the lives of every devotee you find that a situation comes when that person is totally helpless. When all the support systems fail, it is at that time that we wholeheartedly hold on to God. So therefore, deliberately, as though Bhagwan creates a situation where he proves, look, all those people whom you are holding on to, look their power. Let them try to help you. Isn't it? God proves, He creates a situation where He proves to us that all these support systems of the world are useless. Whether it is money power, whether it is muscle power or man power or whatever power it may be, a time comes when it is proved to us that everything is futile. And in those rare moments, our Sharanagati becomes 100%. Because when there is no other support system, where will you hold on to tightly? Unto God alone. So this is not only happening in the case of Dhruva, the same thing happened in the case of Draupadi also. Her support system was 5 powerful husbands. None of them could help her. Then she turned to all those elderly people, Drona, Bhishma, nobody. Then she turned to Dhritarashtra, no. Then finally she held on to her own muscle power, holding on to her sari. In front of a monster, what power do you have? And finally she throws her hands up and says, Bhagavan, save me. This is called as total surrender. And when that surrender is total, complete, then something will happen. Must happen. Bhagavan interferes. This is one common thing happening in all the stories in the case of a devotee. Gajendra also the same thing. First, he was trying to save himself from the clutches of that crocodile. Other relatives also tried to help. Nothing worked. Finally, it is said almost 1000 years he was fighting. Finally understood, now he is going to die. Because so much of blood has already gone. He was feeling weak. And finally he surrenders. So the point is, every one of us, Bhagavan will create such a situation where he will prove to the devotee that I alone am for you. There is nobody else. Prahalada also same thing happened. Nobody was there for him. He was alone, totally alone. And you will always find that when that Sharanagati happens, when that total Sharanagati happens, help comes from the Lord. Whatever is needed, we get it. In our own lives also we can give so many stories. In fact, this is one of the reasons why these Parivrajaka sannyasis, they give up everything. It is as though they throw themselves at the mercy of the Lord, not even taking care of their food or shelter. Or the Shuka Brahma Rishi and all, he is just walking, never staying at any place. God, if you love me, then take care of me. It is your responsibility. Amazing. Hats off to them. What an amount of faith and trust in God. Narad Rishi also, if you see in the first canto, when his mother died, bitten by a snake, he just left everything and went off. So this point we should never forget. That turning point because of which Dhruva left everything and went into the forest, that state of mind is something which is supposed to be revered. Throwing oneself at the mercy of the Lord without holding on to any worldly support. That state of mind is something which is to be considered very sacred and holy. Right, so now coming back to the story, where were we? So this Naradji, after guiding Dhruva, goes to his father, consoles him that there is nothing to worry, this boy is definitely going to come back, you don't have to send your army etc. in search of him. Wherever he is, let him go and do tapas. Don't disturb him now. And he will come back, he will do such great things that even the Lokapalakas will not be able to attain that thing. That is what he is going to do. And he will spread your name and fame. So that what is going to happen in the future, a glimpse is given to his father. Naradji goes away. And now this little boy does tapas, intense tapas. What kind of tapas was it? First month, only once in 3 days, eating some fruits. Then, next month, once in 6 days, eating some dry leaves, grass. Third month, once in 9 days, water. Fourth month, once in 12 days, what? Breathing. Fifth month, stopped that also. Then stood on one leg. Not even one leg, a toe of one leg. Oh my God. This way he stood there. Then what happened? Now he was meditating upon that Lord. That Lord is the one who is the very supporter of the whole cosmos. So now that Dhruva was carrying that Lord in his heart, so naturally he became very heavy, and he became so heavy that one part of the earth just gave up, collapsed. Now, of course, there may be some exaggeration in all this. Because if you think, how can this boy keep up his balance on one toe when the earth collapses? Or, what about other people? If half of the earth collapses, what about the kingdom of Uttanapada? Everything will collapse, isn't it? So maybe there are some elements of exaggeration, and it is allowed in Puranas because Vedavyasa Rishi has all those poor people also in mind, who will not be able to understand that state, who will understand only the gross events, that something should happen, then only it's a real tapas. Keeping all of them in mind, maybe some exaggerations added. Anyway, then what happened? He is not breathing. So therefore, now that he has become one with all the beings, when he stopped breathing, all the beings also felt that suffocation. See, all the Lokapalakas, they ran to Bhagavan, surrendered unto him. They say, we don't know why we are feeling that breathlessness. What is happening? Lord, please save us. The Lord said, don't worry, I know the reason. All of you go back. Very soon you will be free from this disease of asthma. All the devatas went back. Then Bhagavan came. He saw this boy doing this tapas. Then what did he do? Now Dhruva was looking within. He was seeing that form within. So Bhagavan withdrew his form from the heart. Then Dhruva opened his eyes and he saw the very same beautiful form of the Lord in front of his eyes. But then he saw the form. It was as though he was drinking that beautiful form of the Lord with his eyes. It was as though he was kissing that beautiful form with his face. It was as though he was embracing that beautiful form with his outstretched arms. But then he had a desire also. What was the desire? To glorify that Bhagavan, to do the stuti of Bhagavan. But he did not have that language, that education, that proficiency. Bhagavan understood his desire, and what did Bhagavan do? He placed his conch. And what is this conch? Brahmamayena Kambuna. This conch represented Vedas. So it was as though the Vedic knowledge entered into him. And the moment this conch was placed, Paritnyata Paratma Nirnayaha, he had that highest experience where Jivatma becomes one with Paramatma. The highest knowledge. And now he is experiencing that knowledge, and now he is expressing that knowledge with the help of that conch. He gains that ability to communicate that experience. It is as though he was blessed with Mother Saraswati, and now he is singing the stuti of Bhagavan. So yesterday we had seen the first one, the most famous verse in this stuti. Yontah pravishya mama vachamimam prasuptam sanjeevayatyakila shaktidhara swadhamna anyasya hastacharana shravanatvagadin pranan namo bhagavate purushaya tubhyam. My prostration unto that Purusha, the Supreme Self, the Supreme Lord. Who is he? Yaha anta pravishya, entering into me. Prasuptam imam vacham sanjeevayati, the one who is sanjeevayati. Sanjeevayati means what? Enlivening, giving sentiency, giving life. So this Bhagavan is the one which is enlivening what? Mama vacham. Mama vacham, my speech. What kind of speech? Suptam vacham. Actually, I don't have the ability to speak. That speech is not there. But it is by His grace that this speech is coming out. Not only this speech, but anyascha hasta charana shravana tvagadin pranan. Everything. He is enlivened because of His presence. Swadhamna, by His power. Where did He get power? He is the embodiment of all power. Akhila Shakti Dharaha, the one who is, what you call, one who is supporting, carrying, the one who is the possessor, the honor of Akhila Shakti, all powers. So that Bhagavan is the one who is enlivening every limb of mine, every organ of mine. To that Bhagavan, my prostration. So he is seeing that Bhagavan in this body. Now he is seeing the same Bhagavan everywhere in the world also. So in Jiva, he is seeing Ishvara. The next verse is, in the Jagat also, he sees Ishvara. What is that next verse? Ekastvameva bhagavannidamatma shaktya मायाख्ययोरुगुणया महदाद्यशेषं सृष्ट्वानुविश्य पुरुषस्तदसद्गुणेषु नानेव दारुषु विभावसु वद्विभासि. एकस्त्वमेव भगवन्, Bhagavan, you are only one, but Atma Shaktya, with your own power. What is that power? Mayakhya, known as Maya. With your power called Maya, Urugunaya, and Maya has got three gunas, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. So with the three gunas of Maya, Mahadadi Ashesham Srishtva, the whole creation you created with the power of your Maya. And then Anuvishya, having created the entire world, you entered into it. Now what kind of world is it? Asadguneshu, the world which is nothing but matter, Jada. So you created the whole world which is nothing but Jada, and then you entered into this world and gave sentiency to it. Nana iva darushu vibhavasuvat vibhasi, and then you shine in every living being, in everything in this cosmos, in this creation, you shine through them. How? Like Darushu Vibhavasu, like the fire in the wood. So when you, what do you call? When there's a firewood, you put fire to it. So the fire element is the same, the wood may be different. So just like the very same one fire shines forth through all kinds of wood, in the same way one Bhagavan shines forth in this creation full of multiplicities and pluralities. So now these are all the things which Dhruva is seeing, experiencing, meaning the whole world is nothing but Bhagavan alone. So in this body also he is seeing Bhagavan, in creation also he is seeing Bhagavan. So what is his experience? This Jiva is also nothing but an expression of Ishvara. Jagat is also nothing but an expression of Ishvara. So actually speaking, there is nothing called Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara. There is only Ishvara. Everything is his expression. This was his feeling. Then Tvad-dattaya vayunayedamachashta vishvam supta prabudha ivanatha bhavat prapannaha tasyapavargya sharanam tava padamulam vismaryate krutavida kathamartha bandho. Now here this verse is expressing his gratitude. Bhagavan, whatever experience I am going through now, it is only because of your grace and blessings. It is not because of my effort. And it is not only true with me, it is true with everyone, whoever has achieved any greatness worth mentioning. The truth is, it is only because of your grace that every great people were able to do great things. In my case also, this experience which I am going through, it is not because of me or my effort. It is because of your grace. How can I forget your grace? That is the essence of this verse. Twaddattaya vayunaya idam achashta vishwam supta prabuddha ivanatha bhavat prapanna. The Brahmaji, he was like a person, supta prabuddha, like a person who just woke up from deep sleep. But you blessed him with that power to create the whole cosmos. It was your knowledge. Tene brahma hridaya adikavaye muhyanti yat surya. That Brahmaji, from where did he gain the knowledge to create the whole cosmos? Bhagwan, you gave him. As far as he was concerned, he was ignorant, like a person who just got up from sleep. So that description is there in the 2nd and 3rd canto. So Brahmaji, in the beginning of the creation, Brahmaji, he woke up and he found that he was just sitting on lotus, and there was this causal waters, pralaya jala everywhere. He looked around, nobody was there. He was the only one. Then he found that there is a lotus there upon which he was sitting. He thought, let me find out from where this lotus has come. Then he enters into that, the stem, goes in and keeps on going. He found nothing. Again came back. And then totally confused, deluded, not knowing what to do. Just imagine, in creation only you are there. Not knowing what to do. Nobody to guide you. Totally frightened, or I don't know what kind of emotion it must have been. He just prayed, Bhagwan, save me. At that time he heard these words, Tapa, Tapa. Which canto it comes? 2nd canto. Do tapas. And then Brahmaji he did not know from where that sound also was coming. It was the guidance of the Lord. Then he did tapas, I think almost for 1000 years or something. And then Bhagwan appeared and then guided him what you are supposed to do. So Brahmaji also got his power from whom? Bhagwan. So here, not only Brahmaji, Tasyapa Vargya Sharanam Tavapadamulam, even the great people who are liberated, the Mahatmas, all of them, they gained their strength, their enthusiasm, their knowledge, everything from you alone. The same thing is with me also, Lord. Now I am in front of you, but I know it is only because of your grace and blessings that I could attain whatever I have attained. Now here is some scope for discussion. There is always this conflict of self-effort and grace. So let us spend some time. What is the role of self-effort? What is the role of grace? From the highest standpoint, there is only grace. There is no self-effort. Depending upon the standpoint, the answer will vary. Now we are talking from the highest standpoint. Now this is from the highest standpoint. Why? Now Dhruva is speaking because of the touch of the Vedic knowledge. He is not there. The divine knowledge is flowing through him. He is a mere instrument. Knowledge is flowing through that Veda. Vedic knowledge is flowing through him. So therefore the knowledge is the highest. So what he said here, that it is only by your grace I have achieved this. From the highest standpoint, we don't give any value to self-effort. It is only because of his grace. Now let us take the case of Dhruva. Everyone in Dhruva's life had a role to play in making Dhruva what he is now. Yes or no? Everybody had a role to play. If that situation had not been created, Dhruva would not be what he is today. The first, contribution is from Uttama. He sat on father's lap. It is Uttama who created that desire to sit on his father's lap. Yes or no? So the credit should go to Uttama. He has a role to play. Now see how everyone is contributing in the success of Dhruva. So Uttama is responsible. Now when he was going to sit on the lap of his father said, no, get out. Father also has a role to play. If the father had told, come, you also sit, come. Finished. Dhruva's story is over there. Because father rejected him, okay, now he rejected. Suppose Suruchi had kept quiet. Or he would have, no, you also sit. That didn't happen. Suruchi used her harsh words. That also has an important role to play. Yes or no? Now those harsh words hurt him, and then he went to his mother. Now mother also has a role to play. Why? Dhruva went to do tapas inspired by the words of mother. So Suniti has also a role to play. But then how to worship the Lord? Naradji came, Naradji guided him. So Naradji also has a role. Now you see that everybody has a role to play in enlightening Dhruva. Yes or no? Now the question is, so he should be grateful to everyone. Now the question is, who created the situation? Who created the situation? It is Lord and Lord alone. Such a situation was created because that Bhagavan knew that there is a tremendous amount of potential in this boy. This potential should come out. So he created a situation because of which Dhruva was inspired to achieve the highest. Now you may say, no, but it was Dhruva only, no. Who did that effort? Who gave Dhruva the inspiration to put forth effort? See, putting forth effort is very easy. What is difficult is to create the inspiration to put forth effort. Yes or no? Very many times I want to put forth effort, but there is no inspiration. This is a problem with all of us. I want to do, but there is no inspiration. So now, whom will you give credit to for the inspiration with which he was doing that tapas? Whom will you give credit? Can you give the credit to Dhruva? We by ourselves cannot create inspiration in us. It's a fact. Because we don't know what that inspiration is. What are the chemical reactions that should happen in the heart so that that inspiration can come? We don't know. If the inspiration is there, it is very easy to work. If the inspiration is not there, it is impossible to work. The question is, who is the giver of that inspiration? There is nobody else other than God whom you can give credit to. Now, even when he was doing this kind of tapas, any one of else would have collapsed. Dehydration, dead, finished. Breathing even 1 minute, we can't remain without breathing. This fellow is existing. Who is the one who held on to his life? Who is the one who supported his life even when he was not breathing? So ultimately, when we analyze, we come to know that only one factor to which the whole success has to be credited to is God and God alone. There is no place for self-effort. Purushartha has no meaning from the highest standpoint. There is only Bhagavan's grace. Now, analyzing from a different angle. You say Purushartha, self-effort. Whose self-effort? No, the individual self-effort. Who is this individual? Who is this individual? This individual is nothing but the ego. Who is this ego? Ego has only an illusory existence. It has no real existence. Means what? Ego is non-existent. It is only an appearance. Such a non-existent ego, how can it put forth effort? Are you able to understand? A non-existent ego cannot put forth real effort. Impossible. How can the unreal do a real thing? So therefore, from the highest standpoint, we don't give any importance to self-effort. That is what Dhruva is saying. Vismaryat vismaryate kritavida katham artabandho. O friend of the afflicted, how can I forget you? That blessing of yours. Any person who is kritavidaha, the one who knows what has been done by God, that is called as kritavida. Beautiful term it is. Krita, what has been done. Done by whom? By God. Vida, the one who knows. The one who knows what he has done. Such a person, kritavida, katham vismaryate, how can he forget? So from the highest standpoint, there is only God's grace. What about the lowest standpoint? From the lowest standpoint, never speak of God's grace. That is what Bhagavan Krishna speaks in 3rd chapter. Na buddhivedam janayet ajnanam karma sanginam. Don't create confusion in them. Don't give this knowledge to an unevolved, immature, tamasic, rajasic people. Never give this knowledge. What? All is because of God's grace. Your effort has no meaning. What will that fellow do then? Okay then, God, let him do. I will sit quietly. Whatever we have discussed is from the highest standpoint. So this thing should be discussed only to those who can understand this. Otherwise there will be confusion. Instead of helping a person evolve, you will only help that person devolve, fall down. So as far as the lowest people, immature people, worldly people, sensuous people, egoistic people, what kind of upadesha should be given? Self-effort is the most important thing. With your self-effort comes God's grace. Why such a upadesha is given? He is such an egoistic person. For him, ego alone is real, God is unreal. So for a person who considers God as unreal or non-existent or unimportant, for him God's grace has no meaning. For a person for whom ego alone is real, he can understand only the language of the ego. And what is the language of the ego? Self-effort. I am the doer. I did it. I achieved it. This language he understands. So therefore, I must be recognized. This is ego. This is the language of ego. So whenever you meet people who are egoistic, never use the term grace. What is the language you have to use? Self-effort. Now see, there are 3 types of people. One is the lowest category. What is that nature? They don't do anything, but they want the credit for everything. No action, but all credit. Then comes the rajasic people. What is their nature? They do action and they want credit. They do it and then they will say, I did it. Respect me. Thank me. Be grateful to me. Second category. And what about the highest category? They do it and then they say, I didn't do it. I am only an instrument. He did it. I did not do it. This is the highest level. They do everything whatever has to be done, but without a sense of doership. Because they know that everything is done by God alone. In Ramayana that episode comes. Hanumanji burns the entire Lanka, gives the message to Sita and comes back. And there is such a sweet, episode there. And Bhagwan is standing in front of Hanuman saying, Hanuman, I don't know how to thank you. So much you have done for me throughout my life. I will be ever indebted to you. And this, who is saying? Bhagwan, with tears in his eyes, he is saying, I am not even able to look at you. So much I am indebted to you. I don't know how to thank you. And then what did Hanumanji do? Hanumanji just fell at his feet. Bhagwan, Trahimam, Paimam, save me. Why? Bhagwan, if you are praising me, there is all the possibility that this ego will come up. Isn't it? He just falls at the feet of Bhagavan and says, Bhagavan, I did not do anything. We are mere monkeys. We know only one thing, jumping from one branch to another, one tree to another. This is all what we know. If at all such great things have happened, it is only and only because of your grace. This is what Hanumanji says. He just did not take any credit for whatever he has done. This is called 100% grace, 0% effort. But then why do we say Tan Padi Devam Padi? 50% self-effort, 50% grace of God. All these things are for the people who have a strong sense of doership. Kartrutva bhava, I did it. So as long as this I doesn't come into picture, I am not fully happy, satisfied. Isn't it? Remember, even if you say, no, at least 10% you should give the credit to the Jiva. Even if it is 1% self-effort and 99% grace, remember this 1% self-effort is nothing but a sense of doership. It is nothing but reflecting the Kartrutva bhava, and wherever there is Karta, there has to be Bhokta, and wherever there has to be Bhokta, rebirth is guaranteed. So who is the one who becomes free from rebirth? From the depth of our heart can we say, Bhagavan, I did not do anything. Even when the whole world is praising for all the good work we have done, can we remain absolutely unaffected by the praise, by the recognition? And can we from the depth of our heart truly believe that it is only God's grace which has done everything? Can we do it? Then that is true liberation. Are you able to follow? Self-effort has no place because ego is illusory. An illusory entity can never do anything real, anything substantial. It is not possible. It is just a delusion to say, I have done something. But when we are dealing with people, what kind of upadesha we should give? This is only for understanding. This is not for preaching. Na buddhi vedam janayet ajnanam karma sanginam. Generally in the world you find karma sangis and ajnanis. Ajnani means what? Who they don't know their own self. So naturally they will be egoistic people. Naturally there will be strong kartrutva bhava, a sense of doership. To such people what kind of upadesha you should give? What kind of upadesha you should give? Praise self-effort. Because that is the only language they will understand. Whenever somebody does something good, pat on his back, Sabash, very good, I am proud of you. He is happy. Speak in their language. They are childish people. They may be grown old, it doesn't matter. They may have grey hairs, it doesn't matter. As far as evolution is concerned, they are childish. Any person who becomes happy when their ego is pampered, they are considered to be childish in the realms of spirituality. Clear? Think on this. Right. Shall we continue? Yes. So here, now Dhruva, each verse is so heavy. Dhruva is saying, Bhagavan, I know one thing. Whatever I have attained is only because of your grace. Nunam vimushtamatayastava mayayate ye tvam bhavapyaya vimokshanamanyaheto archanti kalpakatarum kupanopabhogyam kunapopabhogyam icchanti yatsparshajam nirayepi nrunam. Bhagavan, those people, bhavapyaya vimokshana manyaheto, anyaheto, for other reason other than bhava apyaya vimokshana. Those people who worship you, for any other reason other than liberation, other than getting free from birth death cycle. Any person, those who worship you with a worldly desire in mind, vimushtamatayah, their intellect has been cheated. By whom? Mayayate, by your maya. Any person who is worshipping God for some worldly benefit, such a person has been cheated by your maya, O Bhagavan. Why? Archanti kalpakatarum. Bhagavan, you are kalpakataru. You are the wish fulfilling tree. Anything can be asked from you. And what is the best thing which one can ask from God? Liberation or devotion, whatever. And then what these stupid people ask? Kunapopa bhogyam ichanti yat sparshajam nirayepi nrunam. They ask for the sense pleasures, worldly pleasures, which is available even in an animal's body, which is available even in hell. And this is what they ask from God. And what kind of pleasure? Yet sparshajam, which is enjoyed by the contact of the senses with the sense objects. Kunapopa bhogyam, which is enjoyed in this dead, filthy, inert body. This is what foolish people ask from you, not knowing that you are Kalpataru. Here is Bhagavan who is ready to bless you with liberation itself, and here am I asking for such petty paltry things from him. Now keep this in mind. Who is telling this? Dhruva. Who is telling this? Dhruva is making the same mistake. Don't forget this. But now we have to understand, Dhruva is speaking. He is only an instrument. Who is speaking through him? Who is speaking? The conch, the Vedic knowledge is flowing through him. Sakshat Saraswati is speaking through him. Veda Mata is speaking. Ya nirvritistanubhrutam tava padapatma dhyanad bhavad janakatha shravanena vasyat sa brahmani swamahimanyapi nathamabhut kim tvantakasi lulitat patatam vimanat. Bhagavan, ya nirvritihi tanubhrutam tava pada padma dhyanat bhavad janakatha shravanena vasyat. Bhagavan, the joy, that bliss which a person feels when shravanena, listening to katha, bhavad janakatha, when a person listens to the stories of your devotees. Your people means what? Bhavad jana means your people. Who are the people of Bhagavan? Whom do Bhagavan consider his own people? The devotees. So the stories of the devotees, when you listen, there is a kind of bliss that wells up in the heart. Bhagavan, this bliss which a person experiences when he listens to the katha of bhaktas, and when he listens to the katha of your leelas, and the joy which one experiences when he meditates upon the lotus feet of yours, Bhagavan, this bliss is the highest. In fact, this bliss is even higher than Sa Brahmani Swamahimanyapi Nathamabhut. Even in Brahman, that bliss is not there. Even in Brahman, that bliss is not there. Now, how will you understand it? So, now understand, this is the language of heart. It is not the language of head. So, whenever there is a language of heart, they will say, Bhagavan, devotion gives much more fulfillment than even liberation. I don't want liberation. I want only your bhakti. So, these are all the language of heart. If there is a liberation which doesn't have devotion, Bhagavan, I don't want it. This is the meaning. If there is a liberation where there is no love for you, I don't need it. So that means that love is the highest. That love is not a business love. I love and you give something back. No. So this is considered to be the highest form of devotion, where I am loving God not to become liberated. I am loving God just for love's sake, without expecting anything in return. Then that love is considered to be the highest love. And this is the love which you will find in Bhagavatam everywhere. Now, how to understand this verse? Bhagavan, the joy which we experience when we meditate upon your lotus feet, or when we listen to the kathas of the devotees, or your leelas, the joy is even higher than the bliss of Brahman. What does it mean? It simply means this. See, here the word used is tanubhrutam, for an embodied. For an embodied means what? As far as the ego is concerned, this is the highest joy. As long as you are separate from Bhagavan, this is the highest joy. Means what? The moment you become one with Brahman, peace is there, but the ego is not there. Are you able to understand? Brahma with Brahmaiva bhavati. As long as you are worshipping God, there is a joy of devotion and the relationship and everything is there. But the moment you become one with God, what is left? Nothing is left. Only Brahman is left. Then who will enjoy the bliss of Brahman? So that is why you will find Ramakrishna Paramsa saying, I don't want to become sugar, I want to become an ant to enjoy sugar. I want that separation. So very many times these devotees deliberately keep a separation. They know that this Bhagavan is my own self, but still they want to keep a separation, because love is possible only when there are two entities. Isn't it? The lover and the beloved. If the lover and the beloved becomes one, where is love? So therefore, in order to experience the joy of devotion, very many times these devotees deliberately keep one step behind samadhi. They say this joy of devotion is much sweeter, because the moment I become one, it's gone. To make it clear, let us take the sleep example. This is the only example we understand properly. The moment you go into sleep, are you really enjoying sleep? No. Why? The enjoyer of sleep is gone. But suppose there is 90% sleep and 10% you are there. You thoroughly enjoy it. Have you experienced it? Because you are there to enjoy the sleep. But the moment you become one with sleep, everything is gone. Are you able to understand? The individual entity retaining the ego, if you want to enjoy sleep, it is impossible. Because when sleep is there, ego is not there. And when the ego is there, sleep is not there. So if you want to enjoy sleep, you have to retain a little bit of the individuality. Are you able to understand what I am saying? In deep sleep, what is not there? The ego is not there. Ego is not there. So actually speaking, only after getting up, we experience the bliss. But during that, there is no individual to experience it. So sometimes what these devotees do, instead of getting into samadhi, because once you enter into samadhi, it's over. So they keep a little distance. This is called as the ego of what you call devotee. Ramakrishna Paramsa also says this. The ego of a child is harmless. See, there is a harmless ego also and there is a harmful ego also. Ego also is of two kinds. There is a harmless ego, there is a harmful ego. Which is harmful ego? Harmful ego is something which forces us to do everything wrong, forces us to think everything wrong. And what is harmless ego? The ego of a child is harmless ego. The ego of a devotee is harmless ego. When we say, I am a child of Bhagavan, I am a servant of Bhagavan, that ego will not harm us. And the beauty is, in that ego, you can experience, retaining the individuality, you can experience the bliss of Lord. You can experience devotion. Now that is what is being said here. Bhagavan, that joy, that devotion, Remember, devotion can happen only when there are two entities. The lover should be there, the beloved should be there. Love cannot be possible in one. Love is possible only in two. So they deliberately keep that distance. Anyway, even if you have not understood, doesn't matter. It is very many times they are all play of words. Now what is being said? Bhagavan, this joy is amazing. Whether it is meditating on your lotus feet, or whether it is the joy after listening the stories of your bhaktas, or listening to your leelas, the joy which we feel, it is amazing. In fact, this joy, where will we get? Kim tvantakasi lulitat patatam vimanat. Even in heavens, this joy is impossible to get. And how is this heaven described? That place where the vimanas fall by the stroke of the sword of Antaka, Yamaraj. Meaning, even those worlds are perishable. Even these heavenly pleasures are perishable. Bhagavan, how can we compare this bliss of devotion with the pleasures of heavens? You can't compare. Then what to talk of other sensuous pleasures? So therefore, Bhagavan, my prayer is only this. What is your prayer? Bhaktim muhu pravahatam tvai me prasangah bhuyadananta mahatam amalashayanam yenanjasolbanamuruvyasanam bhavabdhim nishye bhavatgunakathamritapanamattah. So Bhagavan, prasango me bhuyat. May I always have the association of these people. Association of what kind of people? Mahatam amalashayanam. The great ones. Who are these great ones? Amalashayanam. Their minds are so pure. Bhaktim muhuhu pravahatam. Their hearts are always overflowing with devotion for you. Such people are called Mahan. The great people, Mahatmas. Bhagavan, always give the company of such people who have great devotion for you. This is my prayer. Dhruva, why do you want it? Because I want it because bhavat guna kathamrita pana mattaha. So when I am in the company of such people who have such devotion for you, I will also get a little bit of that. What? That devotion. And thus I will become this mattaha, intoxicated with amrutapana, intoxicated with the immortal drink of bhavat guna katha. So by listening to these glories and leelas of yours, this is like an immortal drink with which one gets intoxicated. Thus intoxicated with this drink, what will happen? Enanjasa ulbana muruvyasanam bhavabdhim neshye. I will be able to cross over this bhavabdhi, this samsara sagara, which is ulbana muruvyasanam. It is full of sorrows and it is full of dangerous sorrows. Bhagavan, by company of your devotees, I will also gain devotion, and with this devotion I will be able to become free from this samsara sagara. Liberation is very easily possible. How is liberation easily possible? With devotion. Tena smarantyatitaram priyamishamartyam ye chanvadasutadussuhrad grihavittadaraha ye tvabjana bhavadīya padaravinda saugandhyalubdha hridayeshu krita prasangaha. Those people, these Mahatmas, who are they? Bhavadīya padaravinda saugandhyalubdha hridayeshu. This is the definition of Mahatmas. Those people whose hearts are attracted by the fragrance of the lotus feet of yours, associating ourselves with them, kritaprasangaha, what will happen? Tena smaranti atitaram priyamishamartyam. When we associate ourselves with such Mahatmas, intense devotion fills up our heart. And when there is intense devotion in our hearts, what is the nature of devotion? Bliss or sorrow? Bliss. From where is this bliss coming from? From the self or not self? Self, right? So then what happens? Automatically that mind which has tasted that bliss of the self, where will the mind go? Towards the self or the not self? Self. So what is happening now? Disidentification is happening. This is the meaning. Tena smaranti. Smaranam is remembrance. Remembrance is identification. So what happens? Automatically, effortlessly, the mind disidentifies. From what? Priyamisha martyam. From this physical body. Disidentification happens, and with that what happens? All identification is connected to this body only. All attachment to what? Ye chanvadaha. You are attached to your body, therefore you are attached to all the other which is following. What are the things which are following? Suta, suhrud, griha, vitta, dara. Suta, son. Suhrud, relatives, friends. Griha, house. Vitta, wealth. Dara, wife, etc. So whatever we are attached to, all those attachments have the root cause in the attachment of the body. So what happens when the devotion wells up in the heart? The mind withdraws from this non-self, anatma, and the mind effortlessly goes to the self. And this is how liberation happens. You come to know that great truth, and the mind abides in that great truth, having experienced the joy of devotion. So therefore, Bhagavan, what is the prayer? Please bless me with Mahatmas who are full of devotion. So when I am in the company of Mahatma, my heart also will get filled with devotion. And as a result of the devotion, what happens? The mind will automatically gravitate towards the self, and thus I become easily disidentified with the non-self. And disidentification with the non-self is what? Ending of ahankara and mamakara. Ending of ahankara and mamakara is what? Ending of samsara. Clear? Yes. Now, what is that nature of that truth? Verse number 15. Tvam nitya mukta parishuddha vibuddha atma kutastha adi purusho bhagavanstryadhishah yad buddhyavasthiti makhanditaya swadrishtya drashtasthitavadhimakho vyatirikta ase. What is that nature of the self? What is the nature of that Bhagavan who is residing in this body? So there is a beautiful verse full of pointers for meditation that we will see. This verse need lot of wonderful pointers are there. Of course, these pointers are there in Bhagavad Gita also. Om Namo Narayanaya. 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 सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ शान्तिः 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 हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ।